So we're going through mid-2017, and every once in a while I like to do a video where we all kind of chill the F out, we all step back, we turn off the adult content, and we actually reflect on a little bit of things, and we kind of, sometimes it's important to zoom out and get a better view of what's going on with Magic, what's going on with the hobby world, what's going on as a more of a holistic view. And, I've been sitting in the backyard, I've been staring at this Nintendo game, and it reminded... Almost lost it. It reminded me, sometimes you gotta go back to the beginning. Sometimes we gotta go back. And it even reminds me, the reason I sit in the backyard, completely naked, and I read these things in the grass, is because it reminds me that no matter what, there's always hostile forests, high mountains, dangerous shit around every corner, all to look for gold, clues, wealth, in the hiding place of Exodus. And this was written in 1988 because we all assume the role of a fantasy game. And I think it's important that we talk about the state of Magic, the ups and downs, everything's cyclical, trends. And I haven't done a little reflection calm video in a while, and I think this is kind of a good fit. I really do. So what we want to go over is I want to kind of walk you guys through. You guys are going to hold my hand, you're going to like it, and we're going to start at the beginning. We're going to go back to 93 when Magic actually came out. Came out with a boom. Everything was flipping great. They had, Richard Garfield, nobody had any idea of what was happening. Nobody had any clue of literally the ripple and the shockwave that was about to change the gaming world forever. Nobody did. And there's no way for anyone to deny that. The age-old thing. Oh, God, if I could go back in time, if my DeLorean, if that damn flux capacitor would just flux, and I could go back and buy all the alpha. I want to buy 100 boxes of alpha. Like, people don't realize. Even back then, there weren't hundreds of boxes of alpha cards sitting around. They didn't exist. You couldn't go to the card store and be like, hey, I want 500 booster packs of alpha. It literally just didn't exist. That's how, and if you're on the East Coast like me, half the stores didn't even get it. And if they even put it in an order through distributor, old school paper, and mail it, if for 100 boxes, they'd be lucky to get one booster box. That's how the world was. It just didn't, and people fail to understand and grasp those things. Even if you knew what was coming, it really wasn't a realistic, probable thing for anybody to predict and capitalize on it from the beginning. So anyways, obviously Magic came out with a boom. 93, boom. 94, boom. 95, this was kind of like an early peak in the 90s. You had tons of card stores, tons of hobby stores, tons of comic book stores. The 90s for the sports card world was booming in the early 90s. This was an epic era for everybody out there who was interested in opening a store. Everybody was opening books, comics, hobby stores. It was a massive thing. I begged my parents to take me and drop me off every Saturday morning so I could go to the comic store, so I could sit there and I could play Magic. It was usually on Saturday morning for like 5 hours. And there'd be like 20, 30 people. And then by the time towards the end, it was like 50, 60 people. It was a very strong market. LGSs, which back then they weren't called LG. There was no LGS. That term didn't exist. It was literally the hobby store. It was just kind of everything at least in the southeast of the country, like in Florida area where I am, everything was considered more of like comics and collectibles or books and comics. Books, again, were still a big thing. I don't know if anybody still knows what that is or not. And, it was a different world. Everybody did really well. These stores were carrying Magic. They were carrying 4th edition, Revised, Ice Age. And they were just selling. They were making tons of money. They were getting these packs. Remember, at the time, wholesale for a box of 4th edition, for example. Remember, they were $3 MSRP packs. So wholesale was like around $1.60 a pack. So, wholesale would be like $50, $60 booster pack, or a booster box. So these stores, if there's 36 packs, it would literally retail for around $105, $10 range, and they would pay maybe $55 a box, approximately. So it gives you an idea that back then, these stores started flourishing. Everybody did really, really well. And, it didn't last. As with everything is cyclical. There are cycles to everything. And there's one constant variable, and that is that WotC, good old Wizards, Mark Rosewater, the people there. Yes, a lot of the corporate people and Hasbro's influence didn't exist back then, but a lot of the people internally still did exist. I don't know how many of them are still there today, but the one constant variable is no matter how good or bad the state of Magic is, financially, for a card store, for a hobby store, for the player, for the collector, for the investor, for anybody involved, Wizards has always kind of been that guiding hand. When it starts shifting too far to the left or right, they kind of put something up. It's kind of like when you're a little kid and you go bowling and they put the little things in the gutters, the little buffer things, so if you throw the ball, it just kind of eventually it bounces off everything. You know, it's one of those things where they always tend to keep it going in the right direction. Now, there's many windows, many times over the last 24 years that Magic's existed, that we have had these time periods where Magic has been weak. It's been scary. Stores, people, families, people have lost their livelihood. These stores didn't last. A lot of stores went out of business. There's been a lot of waves. So right after 95 happened, in that era with the 94, 95, and these guys came around, there became a lot of problems. Stores got a little weaker. They realized the gravy train may not be infinite, you know, after that. And then, of course, Wizards does a double tap. It's like Wizards was double tapping like a zombie. They slap out Homelands, sold real good initially, but then people realized very quickly value wasn't there. And, of course, in that same time period, they not only the 1-2 double tap zombie punch right in the taco that's floppy, then they slap out the reprint set, which created the beginning ripple. This nasty-looking, stupid box is pretty much the sole reason the reserved list and everything exists today. All because of this one misstep, which really should not have ever even existed, quite frankly. There should have never been a set to reprint Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Legends, and the Dark. This should have never existed. Even the box looks gross, because anyone who holds this box, it's gross. You know it. The box whispers to you saying, I'm gross. You know, it is what it is. So, you know, that was kind of the mid-90s. That was the beginning of a downshift. That was the beginning of problems where people who owned stores realized that, well, shit, Magic is not always going to be a gravy train. Maybe it will come to an end. Maybe it is a fad, you know? So as we approached the late 90s, you know, Pokemon had taken off, the base set and Jungle and all that stuff. And then Magic started to turn around and do a good uptick during the Urzas. When Urza's block came out, people were going nuts for it. When Saga came out, people loved it, went crazy, and then that crazy love happy immediately shifted. You know what it shifted to? Not more excitement, because they invented the foil card in this very first foil card mass-produced set. It wasn't that. It was the pure-blown anger of a broken tournament standard environment. Even when they did all three of the Urza's blocks in the sets, during that time period, we started to go from an amazing, overpowered set to a very bitter, angry player base. Right after the Urza's block, there was another very large player exodus, very similar to the Chronicles era. So you had a second one many years later, and towards the late 90s, right after the Urza's time, you had a good chunk of players walk away from the game. They were pissed. They thought everything was broken. Everything was overpowered. I guess now it's 2017. It's OP. We got to use acronyms now. You know, but yeah, the foil cards helped. Everybody liked the invention of foils, but overall, it did crush the consumer sentiment of the game. It crushed a lot of people's opinion about Magic being able to stand the test of time. And that not only damaged the investable value of cards, which back then didn't exist, it actually hurt. During that time period, even the Alpha, Beta, Power 9 cards, which were not called Power 9 back then, though even those cards went down in value. There was a time, even the 5 Moxes, the Lotus, the 2, Time Walk, Ancestral, I mean, these cards actually had a downtick. And there was no reserve list still, keep that in mind. I believe that was during that period was the invention, but they were still tweaking it, adding to it. There was still a lot of, it wasn't really, nobody cared about it back then because none of the cards were worth a lot. So, I don't think a lot of people realize that. And post Urza's block, a lot of game stores around the country stopped carrying Magic. A lot of stores and hobby stores actually started to walk away post Urza's. When Mercadian Masks came out, right after that era of the Mercadian Masks, I believe came the, I don't know, was it Kamigawa? No, I don't think so. You started that, when you hit that 2000s range, post Urza's and post Mercadian Masks, Magic became, the popularity dropped very heavily. And, Okay, so I'm going to stop right there, zoom out for a second. Again, the purpose of me walking everybody through this little timeline video is I haven't done something like this, and I want people to be aware what's going on in 2017 has happened before, but not in the same context, not in the same maybe depth or style. I'm pointing out something that you guys can see. We've had downturns, upticks, downturns, and today is no different, but today is very different on the respect to the way the internet, e-commerce, net decking, tournaments, stores, e-commerce, all of those new variables have been mixed into this old school style hobby. You know, I mean, that's why a lot of distributors still operate on a very old school, you know, how much you spend dictates how you're treated, and there's still a lot of things like that still in place on distributors. They're very old-fashioned because the hobby world has been very slow to evolve. So then when Kamigawa came along, things didn't get any better. It was a 1-2 punch. Again, it started slapping it in the balls. I mean, people's balls were so red back then. I mean, you could tell. You could tell who owned a hobby store. They were walking funny. And the problem was, people were losing a lot of confidence. During this time period, I mean, we're talking you're talking a lot of stores were either going out of business because of the downturn. Remember, now this is early 2000s. Early to mid 2000s, we had not only the Odyssey Invasion block era, I think Kamigawa was like 03, 04, 05 range, but you also had, you know, the post-sports card world bust, the post-Beanie Baby bust, the post-Pog bust. You had all these things collapsing. And everybody, the consensus at that time, if I recall correctly, at least in the people I was around, was Magic was the next shoe to drop. Magic was going to be the next thing to bust. It was a fad. Magic would not be around. During this time period, most people I knew sold out of Magic. Most people sold their power cards. Most people sold their old cards. Most people dumped everything. A lot of people who stuck with it, who were burned with Fallen Empires and Chronicles Homelands era, they got happier with the Urzas, and they got pissed because of power, and then they thought the style and the direction of the game was simply un-American. It didn't fit. It didn't seem appropriate. You know, when that happened, it felt like, to everybody 10 to 15 years ago, it felt like Magic was not going to make it. That was a very realistic consensus of a lot of people involved. A lot of stores discontinued carrying single cards. A lot of stores did not carry the inventory. They did not hold a lot of deep inventory. They didn't keep a lot of deep stock. They didn't go real long with it. So because of that, you know, this brings us to the next interesting point. After they tried to change post-Kamigawa, they started all this type of stuff. You guys remember these generic boxes? They tried to do these expert levels and all these things. And again, it didn't do well. It didn't stick good. Because you're running into people saying, am I a beginner? Am I an expert? What category do I fit in? Don't fucking categorize people. It doesn't work. Which didn't last long. They dropped all that expert level, intermediate, advanced. They dropped that crap. So again, it didn't click with players. It didn't work good. Things were weak. Volatility was still very high. People did not want to buy a lot of these cards. Stores did not want to sit on a lot of them because people were getting burned. You know why? Because people were afraid of literally a mass exodus. And you didn't want to be the last store sitting around holding tons of money in booster boxes and single cards of a card game that looked like it was not going to make it. Everybody at the time, I never met a single person still this long ago who felt Magic was going to stand the test of time. The world famous, infamous, you know, who can make it long term. So then something happened. Then, and I don't know the internals of Wizards, I don't know the details of who was involved, if they hired, fired, changed, I don't know. I don't work there, I don't know anything about them. But I can tell you, everybody can agree, when it hit 2005 forward, something changed. Things started coming out. Sets started coming out. The feel of Magic had a very big change. We don't know, I don't specifically know why. And I'd love for everybody to comment and tell me why you think it was the shift or whatever. Or you could just say, Rudy, your damn green screen, I'm going to flop your taco in your face with a ball. And that's fine. But the thing is, something very crisp and clear changed. And the storyline became very rich. The colors became very rich. the mechanics became very creative. Something felt different. When Ravnica came out, ask anyone who's been around the industry, it's kind of tough to remember now. It's been, even this was around 05. We're talking 12 years ago, people. When this happened, this was a game changer. Because stores who were still carrying Magic noticed an uptick in players, in sales, in people wanting to play the game again. New players were very attracted to it. There was a distinctive feel that started luring people in. I don't know if it was at the time, a lot of the books, the novels, the storyline, or a combination of everything. I don't really know. But I do know for a fact, this was a change. And now here's the bad part about it all. And this is what a lot of people don't realize, why the pricing today is the way it is. Why are these boxes so expensive? Because what I just told you guys. Everything before this era, was burning stores. They weren't going up in value. Nobody invested back then. Stores were not selling them. They were afraid of a collapsing card game where the booster boxes would drop below wholesale, drop into the fire sale clearance pricing. So because of that, when things turned and stores were ordering these, they did not order a lot of them. And Wizards knew that. Because of that, Wizards did not do a massive print run. Wizards was aware of the lower sales. It was a weaker environment. Because of that, the print runs were lower. When the print runs were lower, the stores ordered. Everything was a suppressed lower level. You look out in the ocean, when you see all the ships, it doesn't matter who's right or wrong. When that ocean level drops, every ship out there went down with it. And that was the era where there wasn't a lot of them. So when you fast forward 12 years later to 2017, that's why this shit's expensive. It's not because there's $500 cards in it. It's because there's simply a lack of supply in the system. And there is so much nostalgia and connection emotionally with individuals for these type of sets. The whole Shadowmoor, the Lorton, the original Ravnica, all that stuff is legendary, just cultural Magic history. No way around it. So again, this time, stores started noticing that, wow, local game stores and hobby stores were getting very excited. Things were going good again. Things were going up. It was a turning point. You could feel the difference. And this was the time that I actually became moving back into the game in 2005. The only difference is I did not touch anything new in 2005. This was a time I had just post-college, just started Financial World. That was a time I realized and had conversations that Magic was going to stand the test of time. Magic was going to make it. When I realized Magic was going to make it, I realized all the old shit, all the old stuff is what I needed to go after. I needed to go back and buy all the old shit. We need to go back to the beginning. This shit's going to make it. It's going to grow. There's a major, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I never looked back. So there you go. So now you fast forward again to the last final phase, which again, I skipped over a lot of sets, a lot of blocks. I didn't want to make an hour-long video. I just wanted to make a similar, just an interesting style. So we want to move to the next thing. When original Zendikar, World Awaken, Rise of the Eldrazi came out, original Zendikar sold fantastic. Again, low print run. But a lot of people don't know when World Awaken, especially Rise of the Eldrazi came out, this was also a very strong time period where a lot of stores started really expanding into mass box opening because of the demand and the expansion of e-commerce going into the late 2000s. So you had a lot of mass box openers happening because it was very, very profitable. Now there was a problem. A lot of stores got hammered. Rise of the Eldrazi took a lot of people to Pound Town. A lot of stores shut down during this time period. And it wasn't only a combination of a lack of good secondary market at the time, but actually it was because of the combination of that, and then it had the 1-2 punch of the economy collapsing. So when both of those things collapsed at the same time, a weak secondary market for mass box openers, and then the economy took a downturn, hard, giggity, that started knocking out game stores, hobby stores, left and right, all over the country. So that was a really wacky time, which it wasn't even completely Wizards' fault. It really wasn't. There was just something that, it was a perfect storm, a once-in-a-lifetime set of circumstances that could probably never be duplicated again. So we go into the final phase. Everybody says the Scars block, everybody loved it. Uptick again. Starts going. After that, boom! Right in your face. Original Innistrad comes out, and to this day, arguably the best Magic set of all time. Very hard to argue against that. I love my Urzas, but Very, very hard to argue against that original Innistrad may be one of the best Magic sets of all time. I don't think I can disagree with that. So then, again, after that, you have the Dark Ascension, you have the Avacyn, still riding the wave. Sales still upticking, print runs still going up. And then, the Greek God announcement. We go into the block of all these Greek gods. People loved it. Sales, again, straight up. Arms and feet in the roller coaster were still going up. And the print runs were going higher, higher, higher. People were going crazier and crazier. The sets, the mechanics, the gods, the devotion, the loyalty, all this stuff that was going on, people loved it. Sales were crazy. Local game stores opening up everywhere. This is what, 2012-ish, 11? I mean, everything was just sky high. The sky's the limit. And then, the invention of the Return series. Let's go back to a block we've already done because we're out of ideas, we're out of planes, we're lack of creativity, it's easy, or because everybody who started, what did I tell you, in 05, that was the turning point. So let's try to reset that turning point. So they push it through the roof. Print runs go so high, Magic's never been the same. Player base grows so high, Magic's never been the same. The amount of new blood that entered the Magic field of collectors, players, and the invention of investors and stores popping up everywhere. It changed Magic permanently. And then, of course, Dragon's Maze comes, burns everybody. Gate Crash comes, does fine, but again, print runs so high, nothing's ever been the same. Ever. Anybody who sat on the boxes, waste of time. Anybody who tried to flip them, didn't do real well. You know, So now we fast forward to today. You know, we look at all the newer things, the Battle for Zen, the Oath of the Gatewatch, the Shadows, the Eldritch, and of course, we're now going into the Kaladesh, Aether, which next leads to the Amonkhet and all that shit, and it's never ending. The point is, people forget where we've come from. And it's important sometimes to realize that that's a lot of ups and downs. And right now, with all the turmoil, and the differences now is we have the internet, we have social media, people have loud voices. And unfortunately, the voice of a very few just overtake the voice of the majority of that all of us who are silent, that are really overall not really upset with the game. And then you factor that in with a shitty public relations and a shitty department with Wizards who doesn't seem to focus on the right things many times. You know, the only thing we can all say, and the only one thing I can leave everybody with in this video, is no matter what the up and down was, again, over a 24-year period, Wizards has maintained the ability to pull it back on course. Remember that. No matter how good or bad a set, a block, a tournament scene, standard, modern, vintage, no matter what anyone may think, at the end of the day, the one fact we can all agree with is Wizards will and does change direction, and sometimes too slow, but they do tend to guide it. And hopefully that they can continue to do that, because so far it's been 24 years and we're still here. So they got to be doing something right. Rudy with Alpha Investments, thank you for watching. Different video. Skipped over a lot of stuff, but I just wanted people to be aware. There's been a lot of windows of up and downs, and people just need to remember that. You guys have a great day.